I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. As the rain pattered against the window, Sarah felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. She glanced at Jake, his brows knit in concern. "What now?" he asked quietly. His voice trembled. She opened her mouth to speak, but the lump in her throat tightened, choking off her words. The silence between them stretched painfully. Outside, the sky was darkening, a storm brewing, mirroring the turmoil within. Thunder rumbled in the distance, the sound echoing her racing heart. She took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. This was it. Everything was about to change. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house. They both jumped, startled. What was that? Jake bolted upright, his hand reaching instinctively for Sarah's. Fear shot through her, icy and raw. "I don't know," she whispered, her pulse pounding in her ears. "Stay here." But as soon as she stepped into the hallway, a gust of wind whipped through the open back door, and she could feel the temperature drop sharply. The screaming breeze felt like icy fingers touching her skin. The shadows clung to her, making the house seem alive, almost watching her. Another crash. This time, it came from the kitchen. Adrenaline surged through her as she instinctively moved toward the sound. Her hands trembled, and she could almost taste the fear in her mouth like coppery blood. She pushed open the kitchen door. Her breath hitched. The table was overturned. Chairs lay scattered, though there was no sign of anyone. Just as she turned to call for Jake, a shadow darted past her. "Jake!" she shouted, panic flooding her voice. She raced back to the living room, desperate, only to find he was gone. "Jake!" The word echoed with desperation. Where had he gone? A sense of dread spiraled in her gut. She darted around the room, searching. Tears pressed against her eyes as she fought to stay calm. Suddenly, the sound of a phone vibrating drew her attention to the coffee table. It was Jake's. What? Why would he leave his phone behind? She picked it up, her fingers trembling. Then something caught her eye. A notification lit the screen. A message from an unknown number. Her heart quickened. "Come to the old mill, tonight." A chill ran down her spine. Why would Jake be there? Did he know something she didn't? Each heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears as she realized something was very wrong. Panic clawed at her chest. She thought of the secrets buried between them. Could this be connected? Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and rushed for the door. As she stepped into the stormy night, the rain soaked through her clothes within seconds. But she didn't care. She had to find him. The wind howled as she made her way toward the mill. Each step felt heavier, darkness closing in. Shadows danced around her, twisting her fear into something more tangible. The old mill loomed ahead, broken and eerie, its silhouette punctuated by flashes of lightning. As she approached, the door creaked open, and there he stood, Jake, bathed in the eerie glow of a single light. But beside him was someone else, a figure shrouded in darkness. Sarah's heart sank. Who was this person? Panic surged as she recognized the face, its features hidden but unmistakable. The weight of betrayal hit her like a punch. "Leave me alone!" she shouted, her voice cracking. Jake turned, eyes wide. "Sarah, wait!" But the stranger stepped closer, revealing a wicked smile. "You should have stayed away." Everything she thought she knew shattered into pieces, and as the thunder roared above, something deep within her shifted. The storm was only beginning. "Leave me alone!" she shouted, her voice cracking. Jake turned, eyes wide. "Sarah, wait!" But the stranger stepped closer, revealing a wicked smile. "You should have stayed away." Confusion twisted inside Sarah, a sickening knot in her stomach. Who was this person? But before she could gather her thoughts, Jake's expression shifted. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, something darker and more dangerous than she had ever seen. "Jake," her voice trembled. "What's going on?" "Sarah, you have to listen to me," he pleaded, taking a hesitant step forward. "This isn't what it looks like." The wind outside howled, rattling the old mill. Shadows danced menacingly across the walls, matching her racing heart. She could see the stranger's eyes gleaming with malice, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt paralyzed by fear. What was she supposed to think? Why was Jake so terrified? Suddenly, the stranger laughed, a deep rumbling sound that sent chills down her spine. "You really don't know, do you?" He leaned closer to her, the light flickering, making his face appear even more sinister. "You're the key to all of this. You were never just an innocent bystander." A lump formed in her throat, choking her. "What are you talking about?" Jake's face fell. "You have to believe me, Sarah." But she didn't want to believe him. The truth hung heavy in the air, dripping with tension. Why would he need her? What did this stranger know? Panic surged inside her as she thought back over the years they'd spent together. All the little secrets whispered in hushed tones. The way he'd always kept her closer while pushing others away. "Is this about the money?" she blurted out, desperation rising in her voice. The family debts, the long conversations veiled in secrecy. "Is that why you met him? Is it about us?" Jake shook his head vigorously, but the stranger's lips curled into a victorious grin. "Oh, it's much bigger than money. It always was. You're not just anything, Sarah. You're part of a deal, a pact." The word hung in the air like a ghost. Sarah felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean? What pact?" Suddenly, a bolt of lightning illuminated the room, and Sarah caught a glimmer in the stranger's eyes, a recognition, a sense of being known. It felt like she was being stripped bare, and she hated it. Her hands curled into fists, trembling. "What did you do to me? To us?" "More than you know," the stranger replied, voice low and smooth. "You were always meant to come here, to unlock the truth." Jake took another step forward, almost desperate. "It's part of my past. We didn't want you involved. I swear." But before he could say more, the ground trembled beneath her feet. Shaking the very foundation of the mill, the walls creaked and dust rained from the ceiling. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced between Jake and the stranger, feeling reality fracturing. Then, as she breathed heavily, she sensed something beyond the thunder, a pulse, alive and throbbing. The old mill was far more than just a structure. It felt like something was awakening, something tied to her. "I don't understand," she screamed, panic rising in her throat. The stranger seemed to revel in her confusion. "Then let me show you." In an instant, he lunged forward, and the world around her exploded into chaos. The air crackled, the fabric of the night twisting wildly, and everything went dark. And then silence. When the light returned, she was no longer in the mill. The faces around her had shifted. Jake was there, but not exactly himself. And the stranger stood beside him, no longer sinister, but familiar. "Welcome back, Sarah," he said softly. What just happened?" she whispered, terror clawing at her chest. Jake's expression mirrored hers, a mixture of dread and something like pity. "We need to talk." But Sarah had a feeling she wouldn't like what was coming next. What just happened?" she whispered, terror clawing at her chest. Jake's expression mirrored hers, a mixture of dread and something like pity. "We need to talk." But he had barely begun to speak when the air around them began to shimmer, twisting like a mirage. A cold wave rippled through the room, rattling the surroundings. The familiar figures of Jake and the stranger flickered like a faulty TV. Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Sarah!" Jake's voice echoed, as the scene started to dissolve. A rushing sound filled her ears like a roaring river. The world around them shattered into fragments of light. When the chaos subsided, Sarah found herself standing in an unfamiliar place. The brightness was blinding at first, but as her eyes adjusted, she recognized the surroundings. The old mill was gone. She stood in a vast, empty space filled with fog, shadowy shapes shifting just beyond her vision. Confusion gripped her tightly. She spun around, searching for Jake, but he was nowhere to be found. Panic coursed through her veins. "Jake!" she cried out, her voice trembling. "Where are you?" Suddenly, a loud crack split through the silence, and the ground beneath her shook violently. An icy fear seized her heart. The darkness bled into shapes, and one resolved into the figure of a child. A small girl, not more than 8 years old, stood before her. The child's eyes shone with a haunting light, and she reached out, a faint smile on her face. "Help me," the girl said, her voice echoing in the stillness. "Help you?" Sarah stammered, stepping closer. "Who are you?" But the words felt heavy, like stones in her mouth. The girl was familiar. Something deep inside Sarah recognized her, and yet she couldn't place it. "Please, you have to remember," the girl implored, moving closer. "Remember what?" Sarah's throat tightened, the lump growing heavier. "I don't know you!" Tears streamed down the child's cheeks. "They're coming to find you." A deep rumble echoed through the space, shaking Sarah to her core. "And when they do, everything will change." Just then a gust of wind blasted through the fog, carrying with it whispers, urgent and raw. Words twisted in the air, threatening to unravel her mind. "Secrets, lies, you belong." "What?" Sarah gasped, a chill washing over her. "What do you mean?" But before the girl could respond, everything shifted again. The shadows morphed, and Sarah was thrown into another scene. Another reality. She stood in a room, watching a family gathered around a dining table. Happy faces, laughter echoing. But then her heart dropped as she saw her mother, and next to her, a familiar figure, Jake. And he was not just a friend. He was a part of her. Family. Her breath caught in her throat. "No! No! This can't be!" she whispered, disbelief crashing over her like waves. The child reappeared beside her. "You need to decide," the girl said softly. "If you don't remember, you'll lose them forever." Realization hit like a thunderbolt. "What did you do to me?" Sarah screamed, her heart racing, the world around her blurring. The ground shook once more, and suddenly the walls began to crack. As they fell away, dark figures emerged from the shadows, specters of her past, reeling with anger and intent. "Time's up, Sarah!" Darkness closed around her, shadows clawing at her legs. She felt torn apart, straddling between the past and an unknown terror unfolding in the present. The child's voice pierced the chaos. "Only you can save us." The ground trembled violently, and Sarah's mind raced with questions. Who was the girl? What did Jake truly know? And what had he hidden from her all this time? In that moment, the weight of the universe pressed down on her. The answers were right there, shrouded in the fog, daring her to uncover them. And as the shadows loomed closer, she felt the truth vibrating in her bones, waiting to be unleashed. But could she handle it? Would she dare to break the silence around her life? Time slipped away, the choice looming larger than ever as everything threatened to consume her. The ground shook, sending jolts of fear through Sarah's body. The shadows around her twisted and morphed, and she felt as if the very fabric of her reality was unraveling. Then, without warning, the child's face twisted into a frown. "You can't run from this!" she cried, glancing over her shoulder, the darkness closing in. "Please," Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "Tell me what's happening." But the girl just shook her head, her eyes wide with terror. "They're coming!" she screamed, and just like that, the world shifted again. The fog swirled and then abruptly dissipated, revealing the old mill in its entirety. But this wasn't the mill Sarah recognized. This one was newer, well-kept, full of light. It felt warm, inviting, even alarming in its normalcy. Where am I?" Sarah looked around, confused. Jake stood to her side, looking different than before, his expression more tranquil, a smile lingering on his lips. "You're here, Sarah, with me." The strangeness of it all sent a shiver down her spine. "What do you mean, with you?" But the answer faded as the environment shifted again. The brightness around her was blinding, so she squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them, she found herself standing alone in a sterile, white room. Medical equipment flickered around her, the sound of beeping machines filling the silence. What is this place? Panic set in as her heart raced. Where was Jake? "Jake!" she shouted, her voice echoing off the sterile walls. Then she felt a presence behind her. A doctor in a lab coat stood there, his eyes obscured by glasses. He looked oddly familiar, but she couldn't place him. "Sarah," he said gravely, "it's good you've woken up." "Woken up?" she repeated, the words crawling out of her. Mouth in disbelief. "What's going on?" "During the incident, you were in a coma. You've been in here for over a year." The world tilted beneath her feet. "A year? No, that can't be true." She took a step back, her hands trembling. "Jake! Where's Jake?" "Who?" the doctor asked, brows furrowing. "Jake! My boyfriend!" The doctor's expression softened. Sarah, the police found no one else with you. You've been alone since the day of your accident. Accident! Confusion settled in like a heavy fog. She pressed a hand to her chest, a lump forming in her throat. This can't be right. But the doctor continued. You suffered severe head trauma. We've been monitoring you closely. Tears escaped her eyes, hot and stinging. What about my family? Your parents passed away years ago. You were living alone. It felt like being punched in the gut. She staggered back against the wall, feeling the full weight of a truth she hadn't expected. Everything she thought she knew crumbled before her. The girl, the shadows, Jake, they were all part of a dream she'd been holding on to while reality slipped away. No, no, she cried, shaking her head. What about the secrets? The pact? The doctor tilted his head, studying her. Sarah, those are fragments of the past. You need to focus on your recovery. Just then, the door swung open with a creak. A figure stepped inside, and time seemed to freeze. It was Jake, but he looked older, wearier. His eyes brimmed with unspoken pain. Sarah, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. I've missed you. Everything inside Sarah screamed to throw herself into his arms. You're here, she exclaimed, but the look in his eyes stopped her cold. He stepped back, shaking his head, sorrow etched across his features. I'm sorry, but you need to remember the truth. The truth? She echoed, her breath hitching. And then, as if on cue, the lights flickered overhead. The walls began to tremble, and shadows emerged, not just around her, but in Jake's gaze too. The girl's voice echoed in her mind. They're coming. Her heart raced. Jake, what's happening? He opened his mouth, but before he could reply, everything darkened. A sudden rush of wind howled through the room, swirling papers into the air, chaos engulfing them. Sarah, Jake's plea pierced the madness, but before she could answer, the walls crumbled into dust, and a figure appeared from the shadows. A tall, menacing person cloaked in darkness. Its eyes swept into a tempest of memories, emotions, and truths she'd never wanted to uncover. And in a heartbeat, she realized the most terrifying secret of all. The decision wasn't hers to make anymore. As the darkness consumed her once more, she grasped at the flecks of light, searching for answers. But now the question burned deeper. Who had she really been, and who would she become? The darkness consumed her entirely. Sarah felt disoriented, like she was being tossed in a storm. With a jolt, the shadowy figure loomed over her, whispering threats that echoed in the depths of her mind. She could barely focus, struggling to keep her bearings. The face of the stranger flickered, revealing familiar features. But as she squinted, the image dropped away, leaving only chaos. Then, without warning, a loud crack pierced the air, shattering her senses. The room around her exploded into bright flashes of light. She stumbled back, startled. Just as quickly, everything changed, like a movie scene, rewinding and playing out differently. They're coming for you! The child's voice rang in her ears, the urgency piercing through the confusion. In that electric moment, Sarah felt the very ground shake beneath her feet. She braced herself, eyes wide with fear. The walls of the sterile room began to flicker like a wile. Faulty bulb! and she caught a glimpse of something rising from the shadows. A figure, shrouded yet unmistakably human. "Sarah!" Jake shouted, panic etched into his face. "Get down!" Before she could react, the ground erupted with force. The walls exploded, sending debris flying in all directions. Sarah was knocked off her feet, her head spinning. Chaos reigned, and she barely managed to pull herself up. "Jake!" she screamed, searching for him through the tempest. Her heart pounding with each echo of her own voice. Then she saw him, a figure racing toward her through the dust. But as he got closer, she noticed something horrible. Jake's eyes radiated with terror, but it wasn't just fear. It was betrayal. "Sarah, you have to. Why didn't you tell me?" The words tore from her throat, raw and desperate. She watched as the shadows twisted around him, and the familiar figure beside him transformed into a swirling mass of darkness, drawing closer and closer. "Sarah, But before he could finish, the shadows enveloped Jake, consuming him in a heartbeat. A wave of icy panic gripped her, and she felt her heart stop. "No!" she shrieked. But the air felt thick, suffocating, and just as quickly she was pulled back again, witnessing another scene, the child reappearing, her eyes wide with fear. "You have to remember, it's not what you think." But something felt off. How could she trust a child who appeared in her nightmares? "Sarah, please," the girl pleaded, reaching out. "You're losing all of us." "Losing who?" Sarah demanded, frustration boiling inside her. "What's happening?" Suddenly, the child's face morphed. The innocent features twisted, revealing something darker. But it was the unmistakable eyes that struck Sarah to her core. "Mom!" she gasped, her heart racing. Recognition seizing her breath. No, it can't be. In that blinding moment, memories flooded back, her mother's laughter, sweet moments shared, and the horrid truth she always tried to forget. "You can save them." Her mother's voice echoed, a mix of warmth and despair. "But only if you understand." The darkness around her pulsed, and the shadows shifted again, revealing flashes of horrifying truths and comforts woven into each other. "Everything I did was to protect you." "Protect me from what?" The lump in her throat felt heavy, constricting. "What happened to you?" And before the answers could claw their way into the light, the shadows shrieked louder, drowning her mother's soft voice. Her figures rushed in as if time had collapsed in on itself. "Sarah?" The urgent cry reached her through the tempest. Everything spun and split apart. Then it all fell into silence. In the stillness, Sarah was left gasping for breath, her mind reeling. She felt the weight of a cruel decision bearing down on her. She caught a glimpse of Jake standing beside her, but the warmth she once felt had turned cold. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly, yet the words hung in the air like a loaded gun. It struck her with the force of 1,000 storms. What reality was she living in? Had she broken through truth, or was it another twisted lie? She felt like she was teetering on the edge of everything she thought she had known. But one thing was clear. This was far from over, and she was caught in the eye of a devastating storm. What would be left when it finally passed? The world felt like it was collapsing, shadows shifting all around Sarah. Jake stood beside her, his face a picture of desperation. "Do you understand now?" he asked, but the weight of his question loomed over her, heavy and foreboding. Before she could reply, the wind howled and the walls around them trembled. Each second pulsed with urgency. The shadows thickened, like ink pooling in water, swirling with dark intent. "Stay back!" Sarah's voice cracked, but her courage felt like paper in the wind. The ground quaked beneath her feet, a tremor that sent her to her knees. "Jake!" she cried, reaching out, but before she could grasp his hand, everything shifted, blurring and swirling into chaos. The shadows coalesced into a figure, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The tall silhouette loomed closer, dark and imposing. Each step echoed like thunder. Something familiar flickered at the edges of her mind. "Sarah," the voice slithered through the air. "Did you really think you could escape?" The figure emerged, revealing a face that sent shockwaves through her. It was her mother, but not the mother she remembered. This version was twisted and broken, eyes glinting with malice. "You've missed so much, haven't you?" "No!" Sarah screamed, the word tearing from deep within her. She stumbled back, dread pooling in her stomach. "You're not my mother!" "Oh, but I am!" Her voice dripped with dark pleasure. "You didn't know, did you? None of this was ever an accident. It was all for you. Every lie, every secret, all to prepare you for this moment." Jake's expression shifted, horror written across his face. "Sarah, she's not telling the truth," he pleaded, reaching out once more. "You have to trust me." But Sarah felt something cold grasp her heart. "What do you mean?" She spat at her mother, fear mixing with rage. "What did you do?" Her mother's laugh rang through the chaos, echoing with layers of hidden secrets. "You were always meant to inherit this power, my dear. Jake was just the key to unlocking it. And now, you have the chance to embrace who you truly are." The air thickened with tension, shadows swirling tighter around them, constricting like a vice. Sarah felt the weight of those words, the pull of something buried deep within her. The past churned like a storm, memories bubbling up. "Sarah!" Jake shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Listen to me! She's lying! This isn't who you are! But what if it is?" The words slipped from Sarah's lips before she could stop them. A cold fear washed over her. The haunting flicker of familiarity with her mother's words felt undeniable. Could all her memories be nothing but smoke and mirrors? Without warning, the entire space exploded in light, blinding, white-hot, and searing. Sarah shielded her eyes as the world warped again. When the brightness faded, she found herself not in the mill or the sterile room, but back in a childhood home. The smell of dinner cooking filled the air. Laughter floated from the living room. "Mom?" She felt the familiar urge to breathe easy, safety wrapping around her like a warm embrace. But there she was, her mother, alive and whole, and next to her, Jake stood, smiling warmly, the perfect couple, holding hands like nothing ever happened. "Welcome home, Sarah," her mother said without a hint of malice. "We've been waiting for you." The warmth turned to ice. Sarah's entire being felt as if it had been yanked from her chest, leaving only void. Had any of it been real? Was any of this real? As the truth spiraled, the shadows crept closer. A silent cry echoed through Sarah, demanding answers. But in this moment, wrapped in false comfort, her heart sank deeper into despair. She felt lost, trapped between two realities. Tension hung thick. What now?" she whispered, panic blooming in her chest. What did it mean? Who was she, really? And then, amidst the looming darkness, she sensed it. Jake's reassuring presence faltered, his hand slipping away. There was something dark behind his eyes, as if he too was tangled in this web of lies. "Sarah, he started, but the words crumbled. The shadows grew, swirling like a storm ready to erupt. And Sarah knew, deep down, something terrible was about to unfold. He was caught between trust and betrayal, and the truth lingered, just out of reach, taunting her, daring her to discover the unthinkable. The shadows twisted around Sarah, thick and suffocating. She felt her pulse quicken, every heartbeat echoing in her ears. "Jake," she whispered, almost pleading, as if the sound of his name could anchor her somewhere safe. But he just stood there, his face clouded with uncertainty. "Sarah, you need to," he started, but her mother's laugh sliced through the air like a knife. "Don't you see?" The figure of her mother taunted, eyes gleaming. "You've been living in a fantasy. All of this, a game, a play. You think you can choose?" "Shut up!" Sarah cried, her hands shaking at her sides, fists clenched. "I don't believe you." But just then, the walls started closing in, the shadows shifting like a monstrous tide. Jake flinched, and in that moment, she noticed it. The flicker in his expression, a hint of something buried, something he couldn't hide. "Sarah," he yelled, panic streaking his voice. "Listen to me. You have to understand." Before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. Dust cascaded from the ceiling as the dark figure retreated slightly, as if feeling the tremors. Then everything broke apart. It felt like an earthquake cracking the world into fragments. "Jake!" she shouted, reaching out for him. But he was ripped away by the tremor. The shadows swirled around, pulling him into the dark. "No!" The panic surged, drowning her. "Not again!" And then everything went still. The shadows froze, hanging in the air like a holding breath. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest, the weight of what was happening, too much to bear. Then she saw it, a flicker of light. It cut through the shadows, illuminating something small lying on the ground where Jake had just stood. Heart racing, she rushed forward, kneeling to pick up the object. It was a locket, cold and heavy in her palm. "Jake!" Her voice trembled as she opened the locket, her breath catching. Inside, a photo stared back at her. A picture of 3 people, her mother standing proudly between 2 familiar faces. But one of them wasn't just a friend. It was Jake, an innocent, boyish grin on his face, arms around her mother. "No!" Sarah's voice broke, the ground shifting beneath her as reality spun. "What is this?" "Did you really think you could escape your destiny?" her mother taunted, stepping closer. "Jake has always been part of the plan. You were never meant to get away." But her heart thundered in her ears, drowning out the words. "This isn't real. It can't be." Suddenly, the shadows warped and Jake appeared again, not as she knew him. His face twisted into something cold and twisted. "I've waited so long for this, Sarah," he said, his voice low and suffocating. "Jake!" Sarah cried out, a lump in her throat, hands still clutching the locket. "What are you talking about?" But before he could respond, the world shook anew, rattling everything in the air. Sarah stumbled back, half in shock, half in fear, as the truth came crashing down. The shadows around them erupted, revealing laced whispers as they twisted into a horrific whirlwind that pulled at the edges of her mind. Finally, the shadows fully receded, and what stood before her shocked her to the core. It was a mirror, reflecting not just her, but Jake, too. Their faces morphed into an identical visage, a perfect, twisted replica of Jake and her mother mixed into one being. "You see?" the thing spoke, with voices overlapping sickeningly. "You are a part of us in more ways than one, and now the truth can awaken." Each word felt like a dagger, hitting Sarah with a pain she couldn't fathom. "No," her voice trembled. "It can't end like this." The reflection mockingly laughed, sending chills down her spine. The world spun as new memories flooded. Her mind, memories buried in secrets. Minutes blended into hours as everything she once trusted began to slip away. Her heart raced, lungs fighting to breathe as she realized the terrible truth beneath the surface. In that horrific moment, everything she thought she knew evaporated into thin air. "Sarah," the figure sang, eyes gleaming with fury and darkness. "Your choice is clear now. Embrace who you are, or lose everything." And as she stood at the edge of revelation, mouth dry, laid bare to the truth, she dug her nails into her palm. Or was it the veil of her reality crumbling? Desperation clawed at her mind. Who was she really? Who was Jake? And what darkness awaited her beyond? The storm raged on, whispers swirling around her like a final warning. The shadows pulsed, their dark tendrils curling around Sarah like serpents, pulling her deeper into despair. "You are a part of us in more ways than one," the reflection of her mother and Jake taunted. Her heart pounded in her chest like a war drum. It felt as if the entire world was collapsing. And she could barely breathe under the weight of the truth threatening to crush her. "Sarah." Jake's voice broke through her thoughts, steady yet shaky. "You have to make a choice." "Who are you really?" The question hung heavy in the air. Panic clawed at her throat. What did he mean? Could she trust him? The echoes of his voice wove through the chaos, uncertain and frantic. Moments slipped through her fingers like sand. "Come back to me," he cried, desperation etched in every word. "You have to fight this!" But the darkness coiled tighter, and Sarah felt the breath leave her lungs. The swirling shadows pulled at her heart, and she could barely think through the haze. "Stop!" she shouted, her own voice breaking. "Just tell me the truth!" And then the ground trembled violently. The mirror shattered, glass splintering like 1,000 stars scattering across the abyss. She shielded her eyes, the shards pulling her mind in different directions. Reality twisted and swirled, collapsing into darkness. Suddenly, Silence. The air thick with tension. Sarah opened her eyes, seeing the once familiar room morph into a field. Green grass shimmered under a pale sun, the ominous shadows a fading memory. But there was no comfort here. Something felt wrong. In this vast expanse, she spotted a figure. Small, fragile. A child stood before her. The same little girl from before. "You shouldn't be here," the child whispered, voice tremoring like the breeze. "They'll come for you." "Who?" Panic surged, heart racing as she scanned the horizon. The world felt too open, too bare. "What's happening?" But the girl just shook her head slowly, fear etched on her face. "It's not safe. They'll take you. You must remember." And just like that, the earth beneath her shifted again. It jolted, causing her to stumble. The sky darkened, thunder rumbling ominously. A figure burst forth from the shadows. Her mother appeared. But she was different this time. Her face twisted in fury. And her eyes burnt with anger. "No!" Sarah shrieked, stumbling back. "You're not real!" "Oh, but I am, Sarah," her mother hissed, voice layered with bitterness. "You think you can run? You think you can choose a family that isn't yours?" Confusion twisted Sarah's insides like a knife. "What do you mean?" she spat, fists clenching. Shadows swelled, swirling menacingly. The child's eyes widened in terror. "Run!" she screamed, pointing toward the horizon. "They're coming!" Before Sarah could react, the ground cracked open beneath her, sending her tumbling into chaos. A whirlwind of darkness surrounded her, and she felt like she was being thrown through space. Wind whipped around her, heart racing, fear clenching at her throat. Then, in an explosive moment, it all stopped. The world fell silent, and she found herself back in the milled echoes of the past, but twisted. A voice rang in her ears, familiar and haunting. "Sarah, we've missed you all so much." The shadows parted, revealing a group that sent her heart into freefall. There stood her parents, alive and untouched, their eyes glistening with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. But beside them lingered her mother's previous darkness, and a figure she never expected. Jake. Not as she remembered, but a ghost of the past that made her knees buckle. "You were meant to join us," her mother cooed, a smile poised on her lips. "This is your true home." Sarah felt the ground drop beneath her. "No, how could you?" she gasped, her voice trembling. "You're not real." But the truth crashed in. The soothing voices masked something vile. A memory, buried deep, clawed its way forward, piercing her heart with betrayal. And in that moment, as the shadows rose, Sarah understood. The girl, the secrets, Jake. "You're all connected," she shouted, realization spiraling. What if it was all a lie? But just then, darkness flooded in. A cold wind swirled around them, and the screams of the child echoed through the air. Sarah's heart raced. She had to make a choice. The truth was close, but in grabbing for it, what would she lose? As the remnants of the shadows swirled around her, Sarah felt something shift inside. The illusion of her mother and Jake began to fade. Pieces, crumbling like ash, scattered in the wind. She remembered the warmth of genuine laughter, the love they once shared, and that familiarness was enough for her to summon her courage. "No more lies," she shouted, her voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "I won't be a pawn in anyone's game. I choose my own path." With that declaration, the shadows recoiled, the storm inside her surging with newfound strength. She felt the heartbeat of the world with every step she took. The child's face flashed through her mind, urging her forward. "You have to remember." And there it was, clarity pulling at the edges of her consciousness. She lunged forward, feeling an unseen force pull her to the mirror remnants that still floated in the air. With trembling hands, she grabbed a shard, its edges glinting like a beacon of truth. "Show me," she whispered, and the reflection rippled. The vibrant memories swirled around her. The love, joy, laughter, pain, and darkness blending into a tapestry of what it meant to be human. Suddenly, she realized her family had never truly vanished. They lived through her spirit. She recalled the warmth of her mother, hugging her after a bad day, her father's playful teasing, and the safety she felt beneath their wings. The shadows flickered violently, desperate to pull her back. But Sarah stood firm. "I am not who you say I am," she yelled, her voice unwavering. "I am stronger. I am whole, and I choose love." A brilliant light burst forth, radiating from her heart and pushing back against the darkness. The shadows screamed, twisting into a vortex of despair that folded in on itself. The air crackled with energy, and for the first time, Sarah felt free. The storm outside grew quiet as light flooded the space, enveloping her in warmth. She spun around, scanning the horizon for Jake. "Jake!" she called out, her voice trembling with hope. For a moment, the stillness felt unsettling, but then he emerged, slowly regaining his essence, stepping through the veil of darkness that had clouded his vision. "Sarah!" His voice was a lifeline as he rushed to her, their arms wrapping tightly around each other, holding on like it was the last chance they'd ever get. "I thought I lost you," he murmured, relief washing over him as they clung tightly. "You did lose me," she whispered against his shoulder, "but I found my way back." As they stepped away, they turned to see her mother, broken but transformed. A tear streaked down her face. "I was wrong, my child. I tried to protect you from everything, but instead I pushed you into chaos. I'm sorry." "It's okay," Sarah said gently. "We all have our shadows. What matters is choosing the light." The echoes of darkness began to fade into the horizon, releasing a chorus of sighs. The winds shifted, carrying the smell of fresh beginnings. As they shared one final look, their pasts intertwined, ready to heal together. "Let's go home," Sarah said, intertwining her hand with Jake's, knowing the path ahead would be theirs to forge. As they walked into the sunrise, a feeling of hope and warmth flooded her heart. They emerged together from the shadows, but new mysteries still lay on the horizon, waiting to be unraveled. And as the sun rose, illuminating their path ahead, Sarah knew her journey was just beginning. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss upcoming exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait another second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, and only true fans understand the importance of taking these actions. If you like stories about farmers, about everyday life on the farm, and want to know what really happens in the daily lives of the biggest farmers in the world, the hidden stories of the richest owners, and the secrets of the farm girls that the media doesn't reveal, check out our virtual book with the most famous and secret stories from the farm. Click on the first link in the video comments and get yours now. You need to watch this now. Don't wait another second to share.